There's a quiet tragedy that plays out in offices, in governments, in activism. And across history, the kind-hearted, intelligent, and idealistic often lose, not because they're unqualified, not because their ideas lack merit, but because, in the harsh light of reality, goodness alone isn't enough. This is the uncomfortable truth that Niccolò Machiavelli, the razor-sharp political thinker of 16th century Florence, dared to articulate, a truth still echoing in every failed revolution, every silenced reformer, every overlooked voice in the room. Machiavelli didn't write to glorify tyranny. He wrote because he was tired of watching good people fail. Machiavelli had a front-row seat to the political chaos of Renaissance Italy. Assassinations, betrayals, fragile alliances, and the ever-turning wheel of fortune. In this world, virtue was admirable, but irrelevant if unaccompanied by cunning. He saw it clearly: those who rise to power, who shape the world, are often not the most just or the most moral, but the most adaptable, the most strategic, the most willing to get their hands dirty. This doesn't mean we should abandon morality. That's not the message. Machiavelli's insight is subtler and more disturbing. He asks us to confront a paradox. If you want to make the world better, you cannot afford to be only good. You must learn from those you might instinctively recoil from. You must understand manipulation, not to destroy, but to protect. You must know fear, not to rule with it, but to resist those who do. Because here's the core issue: the wicked are often simply more prepared. They're unafraid to weaponize language, to bend truth, to charm and intimidate. They know that people don't always follow reason. They follow strength, spectacle, confidence, regardless of substance. And yet, the good among us often cling to the idea that integrity alone will carry them through. That honesty, logic, and patience will win the day. Machiavelli would shake his head. History bears this out. Noble intentions have been crushed by brute force, swallowed by propaganda, drowned in indifference. The reformers, the prophets, the dreamers, they often perish, not because they were wrong, but because they were unprepared for the battlefield they entered. Machiavelli's solution: not to abandon morality, but to strategically wield it. Think of a chess game. The king may be noble, but it's the queen who moves with lethal versatility. Machiavelli urges the idealist to become more like the queen, graceful, yes, but lethal when necessary. He isn't telling us to become monsters. He's asking us to stop being naive. The true challenge isn't choosing between good and evil. It's choosing to be effective and good, without being consumed by either. To understand that sometimes protecting the good requires acting in ways that aren't always comfortable. To protect peace, you may need to know war. To spread truth, you may need to understand how lies spread. To lead, you must learn how people follow even when they shouldn't. Machiavelli's world was ruthless, but ours isn't much gentler. Social media rewards outrage over nuance. Politics rewards charisma over substance. Corporations reward appearance over ethics. And yet, the temptation remains to withdraw, to stay pure, to reject all strategy and retreat into moral superiority. But what does that achieve? A better world will not be handed to us. It must be built and defended by those willing to understand how the game is played. So, what does that mean practically? It means learning how influence works, how persuasion operates beyond reason, how fear is wielded, and how confidence can silence doubt. It means being able to smile while knowing when to say no, to charm without surrendering your principles, to listen to your enemies, not to agree but to learn. Because sometimes survival is the precondition for change. You cannot fix a broken system if you've already been pushed out of it. You cannot teach if you are never heard, and you cannot inspire if you are ignored. To be heard in a noisy world, you may need to raise your voice, or change its tone, or learn how to whisper so effectively that people stop talking just to listen. Machiavelli's great insight wasn't that the world is dark. It was that the light must learn how to navigate the dark without being extinguished. We're not being asked to become villains. We're being asked to become wiser heroes, to lead with strength, to protect our ideals with strategy, to understand that virtue means very little if it never reaches the real world. Machiavelli isn't an enemy of morality. He's its reluctant bodyguard. He reminds us that sometimes if we want goodness to win, we have to stop playing like it's a fair game, because it isn't. Look closely at any significant historical change, and you'll often find a contradiction. The movement may be founded on justice, but it was rarely won through justice alone. The civil rights movement, it wasn't just speeches and sit-ins, it was also strategy, media optics, negotiation behind closed doors, and at times calculated provocation. Gandhi's non-violence, it wasn't just passive resistance, it was theater, timing and pressure. The world doesn't reward good intentions, it responds to leverage. This is what Machiavelli understood so well. He wasn't cruel for cruelty's sake. He simply knew that to achieve something meaningful, we must understand the mechanisms of control, even if we choose not to use them recklessly. But let's be honest, this line of thinking makes people uncomfortable. We want our heroes to be spotless. We want them to win by playing fair, by following the rules. But who wrote those rules, and who benefits when good people follow them blindly? Many systems are designed to protect themselves from real change, and those who rise within them are often not the wisest but the most politically fluent. Those who know when to flatter, when to pivot, when to hide their ambition behind a smile. If you walk into that world with only honesty, you might be admired, but you'll likely be dismissed. So, what does it mean to be truly moral in a world like this? Maybe it means embracing complexity, knowing that sometimes you must choose between two imperfect options, that to do the most good, you might have to momentarily wear the mask of someone you dislike. It's not about selling your soul, it's about buying time, buying influence, buying space for better ideas to take root. Let's not mistake this for cynicism. Machiavelli wasn't promoting despair, he was offering clarity. He was saying if you want to be good, learn how the bad operate, so you can protect the good from being crushed by them. It's easy to sit on the sidelines and stay pure, but what if that very purity is the reason injustice thrives? There's a deeper philosophical question here. What is morality without power? If you know what's right, but you have no ability to realize it in the world, what then? Does it live and die in your head? Is it enough to be right if your righteousness changes nothing? Machiavelli would say no, because ethics without influence is a kind of self-indulgence, a warm blanket that comforts you as the world burns outside your door. The mature moral actor doesn't just feel the right thing, they fight for it, they build strategies, they think about timing, optics, risks, alliances. They are willing to take heat, to be misunderstood, even disliked, if it means protecting something bigger than themselves. That takes courage. A different kind of courage. The kind that doesn't just march in the streets but also sits at the negotiation table, that writes legislation, that edits policy, that learns how to speak in the language of power, not just in the language of truth. Because let's face it, if you don't speak power's language, it won't hear you. And it certainly won't translate your noble intentions into action. That's what Machiavelli was trying to tell us. Stop whispering to each other about how things should be. Start learning how to make them become. Many well-meaning thinkers and reformers have been chewed up and spat out by reality because they mistook moral superiority for political leverage. But Machiavelli knew righteousness without ruthlessness is fragile, and fragility doesn't change the world, it only survives in small quiet corners, until the wolves arrive. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a responsibility, to toughen up, not to become hard-hearted, but clear-eyed, to train ourselves not just in ideals but in influence, not just in virtue, but in vision. To become the kind of person who can carry a cause not just through feeling, but through force, not through violence, but through strategy. There's nothing noble about losing well, there's nothing heroic in failing to protect what matters, because we were too proud to be practical. Machiavelli wanted us to understand that the world doesn't bend to our hopes, it yields to those who understand its pressure points. In a way, he wasn't arguing against morality at all, he was expanding its definition. To be truly good is not to be helpless in the face of evil. To be truly good is to become skilled in the very tools that others misuse, and to repurpose them for something better. That is the burden of serious goodness. So, if you've ever wondered why your honest efforts fell flat, if you've watched lesser people rise while better ones remain silent or sidelined, know this: you're not wrong to care. You're not wrong to believe in kindness, truth, and justice. But if you want those things to survive in the real world, if you want them to thrive, you must be willing to step into the arena armed with more than just good intentions. You must learn the art of power, not to dominate, but to defend. Because sometimes being good requires knowing exactly how the bad win, and then doing it better. There's an ancient truth, often whispered but rarely shouted: those who shape the world are not always the ones we admire, and those we admire often have little real influence at all. Injustice doesn't persist because good people are too weak. It endures because they often refuse to understand the terrain on which power plays out. They insist the world should be fair, as if that plea alone were enough to bend reality. But reality doesn't respond to pleas, it responds to pressure. Power is not evil, it is neutral, like fire, like water, like language. It is a tool, and what matters is who wields it, and for what purpose. Machiavelli knew this. He didn't worship power, but he studied it relentlessly, because he saw what happened when those with better hearts lacked the courage or the cunning to claim it. They were swept aside, their ideas buried, their movements hijacked. How many bright minds have written manifestos that no one read? How many idealists died before a single policy changed? How many times has morality been exiled to the footnotes of history? Intentions are silent, results are loud, so perhaps the lesson is this: if you believe in justice, you need to learn persuasion. If you seek peace, you must understand conflict. If you carry truth, you must know how to deliver it where it can't be ignored. Otherwise, your wisdom lives only in whispers, while the world listens to those who shout louder and strike harder. And yet, this isn't a call to become manipulative or cruel. It is a call to grow up. Moral maturity isn't about staying pure, it's about being useful in a dirty world. It's about navigating a battlefield with the mind of a tactician and the heart of a reformer. About knowing when to speak and when silence is more strategic, when to give and when to leverage refusal, when to walk away and when to wait, like a lion hidden in the grass. The world doesn't need more saints, it needs capable guardians of justice. People who can stand in the middle of chaos, see clearly, act decisively, and remain intact. Machiavelli wasn't inviting us to betray our values, he was daring us to defend them by any means that leave them standing. Because here's the truth: many avoid. If the wicked win, their vision becomes reality, and if the good remain passive, theirs becomes poetry. We tell ourselves we're losing because we're too noble, but maybe, just maybe, we're losing because we refuse to study our opponents. We mock them, we despise them, but do we understand them? And if not, how do we expect to counter them? Machiavelli would argue, understand them deeply. So deeply that their methods no longer surprise you, and no longer paralyze you. This is not betrayal, it is preparation. To survive in this world, to lead, to reform, to protect, you must learn from the masters of influence. Even if you despise their aims, you do not become them, but you outsmart them. This is the uncomfortable edge where ethics meets effectiveness, where doing what's right becomes more than just feeling what's right. It becomes knowing how to make it real, because good doesn't win by chance, it wins by skill. Machiavelli's genius wasn't cruelty, it was clarity. He asked, what is the cost of our idealism when we refuse to protect it with strategy? He knew that bad ideas don't fade just because we frown at them. They are defeated when something smarter and stronger takes their place. And if the good refuse to become smarter, then they leave the stage to others. So what do we do with this knowledge? We sharpen ourselves. We learn to read the room. We master timing. We wield words like weapons. We move silently when shouting would fail. We learn when to smile and when not to blink. The world isn't asking us to become devils, but it is asking us to stop acting like angels with broken wings, to stop hiding behind virtue, and start building the competence to defend it, because no one changes the world by being only good, they change it by being good, and dangerous to those who oppose it. Machiavelli still disturbs us, not because he was heartless, but because he held a mirror to our fears. He forced us to see that our failure isn't always due to fate. Often it's due to our refusal to evolve. We wanted change, but we didn't want to learn how change works. We wanted justice, but we didn't want to fight for it on its own terms. So here is your invitation, not to abandon your ethics, but to upgrade them, not to destroy your goodness, but to defend it with discipline, not to envy the cruel, but to outmaneuver them. Because the future doesn't belong to those who dream, it belongs to those who build, and know exactly how to keep what they build alive. History is filled with moral heroes who won, not because they were pure, but because they were precise. They mastered language, timing, alliances, media, rhetoric. They knew how to use the system they sought to change. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't just march, he negotiated, he strategized, he studied Gandhi's playbook, who himself studied the British Empire more closely than many of its own politicians. These weren't just moral men, they were tactical moral men. They understood what Machiavelli had already told us in hushed tones. If you care about justice, you must also care about leverage. Because in this world, change doesn't come from virtue alone. It comes from the ability to move hearts, shape perceptions, dismantle resistance, and sometimes apply pressure when kindness fails. This is the side of goodness we often refuse to acknowledge, its strength. We like to think of good people as soft-spoken, modest, deferential, but what if goodness was also bold, strategic, calculated, ruthless, not in cruelty, but in its refusal to be silenced? What if you, the person who cares about what's right, stopped disarming yourself in the face of those who don't? Machiavelli's world was one of betrayal, backstabbing, and politics played like a blood sport, and yet, his message echoes today, even in gentler times. If you want to climb, know the mountain. Don't just hope it will move for you, because it won't. Many of us walk into the arena of life, thinking good ideas will naturally triumph, that reason will prevail, that truth will rise on its own. But Machiavelli reminds us, truth without strategy is just noise. Justice without action is just theater. Goodness without strength is just decoration. This is why revolutions fail, why visionary leaders are replaced by cynical ones, why organizations with heart are swallowed by those with sharper claws. It's not that the bad are stronger, it's that the good refuse to train. We cling to a fantasy that the world will reward sincerity, but it doesn't. It rewards impact. So the question becomes, can you remain good and become dangerous? The answer, according to Machiavelli, is yes, but it requires the death of naivety. It requires a second education, one that's rarely offered in schools, the education in power, persuasion, and control. Not to dominate others, but to protect what matters, to shield justice with armor, to guard love with discipline, to uphold truth with precision. Think of the great stories. Odysseus survived not by being noble, but by being clever. The Hebrew prophets challenged kings not by smiling, but by using words as thunder. Even Socrates, who drank poison for truth, was not a soft man. He confronted, he questioned, he endured with steel. The greatest servants of good have always been warriors in disguise. So the next time you feel crushed by the cynics, the next time your truth is ignored, the next time the loud, the corrupt, and the self-serving take the throne, don't just weep for the world. Study it, learn its movements, understand its rhythm, read its tactics, and then step back in not as prey but as a contender. You don't need to become a villain to defeat one, but you do need to stop being a spectator in a game where only players have a voice. That's Machiavelli's deeper message. Not to praise darkness, but to outmaneuver it. Not to imitate tyrants, but to deny them their monopoly on skill. Because the world will always be contested ground, and if the good stay on the sidelines, only one side is playing. There is nobility in protection, there is dignity in strategy, and there is love, fierce love, in refusing to let your values be erased by your hesitation. You cannot heal the world unless you first learn to hold it. So learn how influence works, learn how decisions are made, learn how people are moved, and then move them. Because if we don't, the world doesn't wait for our virtue, It obeys only those who show up with both conviction and competence. Machiavelli may disturb our dreams of purity, but he gifts us the tools to bring those dreams to life, and in the end it is not enough to be good, we must also be ready. For all his sharpness, Machiavelli wasn't a nihilist. He didn't say abandon morality, he said understand its limits. He said, don't worship virtue blindly, use it wisely. And in this he joins a lineage of thinkers who have tried to bridge two worlds, the ideal and the real. Plato warned us about the shadows on the cave wall, but even he admitted, most people will kill the man who tries to drag them toward the light. Jesus taught forgiveness, but Machiavelli reminds us, he was nailed to a cross by the very people he tried to save. Gandhi brought down an empire, but not by meditating alone. He mobilized, he protested, he turned morality into movement. The truth is, every moral breakthrough in history came not just from kind hearts, but from fierce minds, from people who didn't just want to be good, but wanted good to win, and that requires a kind of dual vision. You must see the world as it is, not just as you wish it were. You must know what moves people, not just what's right in theory. You must become fluent in power, not to wield it cruelly, but so you can prevent it from crushing what matters most. Because today, power doesn't always wear a crown. It hides in algorithms, in board meetings, in media cycles and public opinion. It whispers in trending hashtags and corporate lobbyists, and viral misinformation. It doesn't shout, it shapes. And those who don't understand how power operates, get operated on. They lose not because they were wrong but because they were unarmed. This is the challenge of the modern age. We are not just in a battle of values, we're in a battle of attention, a battle of narratives. And while the righteous speak with care, the cunning speak with reach. While the honest wait their turn, the shameless take the mic. While the wise hesitate, the reckless go viral. So what do? Do we sink to the level of propaganda and deceit? No, but we do have to stop pretending that virtue alone will carry us. What Machiavelli understood is that the architecture of change needs both pillars, vision and execution, justice and leverage, ethics and strategy. It's not enough to dream of a better world, you have to engineer it. That means learning how institutions work. It means knowing how people think. It means anticipating resistance and having the emotional strength to endure it. You cannot retreat to purity and expect the world to purify itself for you. And here's the truth we hate to admit. Those who do not deserve the spotlight often claim it first, not because they're better, but because they understand the mechanics of persuasion, because they are not afraid to play the game. But why should we let them own it? Why shouldn't we, the ones who actually care about truth, dignity, humanity? Why shouldn't we become excellent at influence? Why shouldn't the philosophers become tacticians? Why shouldn't the poets learn politics? Why shouldn't the heart learn the language of the sword? Because otherwise, goodness will remain homeless. It will stay in books and sermons and private journals, while the world is run by those who mastered the art of movement. Machiavelli doesn't want you to become cruel. He wants you to become capable, and capability, for those who love the world, is the most sacred duty. We are not here to merely observe history, we are here to shape it, to protect the flame when the winds of cynicism grow too strong.